So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brian Farrell, CEO of the County Carlow Chamber. Delighted to welcome you to this afternoon's webinar, Coronavirus in the Workplace, How to Deal with a Case. Today what we want to do is to take you through a bit of scenario planning, looking at what to do if there is a case identified in the workplace to help you and to see what the best ways to deal with it. I'm delighted to welcome Dean Curley from Peninsula, and we've got Douglas Higgins as well, and they're going to take us through this afternoon's session. So I will ask you, if you want to sit back and enjoy the webinar, if you've got any questions or comments as we go through, feel free to pop them in. You've got a Q&A function and a chat function just on your screens there, so you can pop in comments and chat as we're going through it, and they would be dealt with, and we will deal with some more questions on that as well at the end. Today's webinar is also being recorded, so if you do want to catch up on anything, we will have a link to the webinar out to you once we are completed, and we'll also be able to send out the slides, and it'll also be available on the Chamber website. So for me, for now, I'm going to go quiet and I'll hand you over to Dean. So thank you very much and enjoy the webinar.
Hi, how you doing, guys? You're all very welcome to the webinar. So we're going to go through today coronavirus in the workplace. I'm going to try my best to get rid of any ambiguity behind it and go through some of the simple steps and some of the understanding about what we need to do and your responsibilities under the new legislation. So today I'll go through the return to work safety protocol and how that is affected by cases. So returning to work, what should we be doing in the workplace right now? We'll go through the guidance and support, so the documentation and how to protect your employees' health and well-being. And then, as Brian said, if you put the questions into the boxes, we'll be able to answer a few at the end. Today's session's about half an hour, but if there's questions that come up, we will get to them. So I will answer them in due course. So the return to work protocol. I'm going to touch on this first, just to kind of set the scene for it. It's all based on the roadmap of reopening and the return to work safety protocols. Now, when I go into clients and I'm going through a protocol and going through their safety statements, I love to see these. You know, that's all well and good, but these should not be a standalone. This is what we base our systems on. So we need to take the information from it, and we need to develop our own safety management system. And we do that through a business response plan. So a business response plan, the easiest way to explain what a business response plan should be is if you were just to email it to me now, or we were to sit down offsite and you were to give it to me, I shouldn't have to ask any questions and should be able to visualize what you're doing on the premises and what you have put in place. Now, it has a knock-on effect to the update of the health and safety statement, your risk assessments, and it deals and should have specifics on the dealing with suspected cases of COVID-19. You identify the high-risk workers within the response plan. You appoint appropriate managers for dealing with suspected cases, and you're creating contingency measures to address rates of worker absenteeism, reducing spread of infection, and then changing work patterns. So all of this should be within the response plan itself. Now, if we just go back to the response plan and dealing with suspected cases just for a second, having that in place is spot on, and I will go into detail on that, but it's how it's trained on. It's how we deliver and develop that for the staff that are actually going to be dealing with it. That's the important part. So I'll come back around on that, but that's a part where we're really going to identify today. The lead worker representative. So within the within the protocols, you should have at least one lead worker representative. Now, as this is progressing, and this is not going away anytime soon, we need to look at when lead workers are off. We need to look at the patterns. We need to assess whether that's actually being, is it appropriate for the amount in the business. So they're ensuring COVID-19 measures, and they will lead the policy for a confirmed case or a suspected case. They should receive necessary training and have a structured framework following to follow within the organization. If there's one thing that I would recommend with any suspected case and the policies themselves, is run drills on them. There's a reason that we run drills on fire evacuations. It's so that in the case of an emergency, we know exactly what to do. Everyone knows their role, and that they can follow it in that case of an emergency. Now, a suspected case, a confirmed case, may not be as dramatic as a building burning down. But knowing your roles, knowing exactly what needs to be put in place is vital as well. The last thing you want is something happening and and people looking around or having to go to a folder. It can be in the folder, but we need to make sure that it's live, that it's in people's minds. So drills are the vital part of the training. The contact log. So we all know about the contact tracing logs, and taking names and numbers and things like that. But why are we doing it? And what effect does that have on a suspected case and a confirmed case? So the contact tracing, yes, is kept. You keep a log of group work to facilitate contact tracing and inform workers of the log, the purpose of the log. So in a suspected case or confirmed case, we have who that individual has been in contact with, what grouping are they in. Now, for bigger businesses, this comes more into play than the smaller businesses, but we still have who they come in contact with. Are they in small groupings? What kind of shift pattern they're on? This is all part of it. So if that one person is pinged or is a suspected case or a confirmed case, we can then isolate certain parts of our workforce or certain areas within our business. So that's what the contact tracing kind of comes around on. So that's why it's in there, and that's I'm just highlighting the fact of it. The HSA will ask for it as well, and when you do call them, and you will go through that, but when you do call them, they will ask for it, and you can explain to them what your system is behind it, and we have to show our workings, much like a maths test. We have to show our workings on our contact tracing logs. And it all derives from risk assessments and safety statements. So risk assessment, employer needs to undertake a risk assessment to address the levels of risk in the workplace. Now, the levels will determine, in COVID-19, will determine the points of contact, vulnerable persons, all of that put in place. You need to consider the personal hygiene practices, the travel to and from work. So with a lot of clients, just stopping on that for a second, with a lot of clients, I would have we would have been talking about, employees just in the workplace. So we look after the health and safety here, safe at work, safe home. We now need to look at it a little bit further than that. So, we want to make sure that they're following advice traveling to work. Are they on public transport? How are they getting in? Making sure that we kind of follow the guidelines, and that's where we're not bringing extra potential threats into the business. The use of IT equipment, that sometimes can fall down as well, so making sure that that's in place. The use of welfare facilities. I'd often say when I go into a business, you can tell how good a business is or how on top of their policies they are by how they treat their welfare facilities. So you need to make sure that that's been taken into consideration as well. Close working and meetings, all of these risk assessments come into play with your confirmed cases and suspected cases. and it should all be then knocked on to the policies. So review and revising the sick leave policies. Myself and Brian were talking as well just about having policies to deal with the information that's coming out of the business as well, if there is a case, so making sure that we cover all our bases on health and safety, and then how do we deal with the media? What's our BCP, or business contingency plan as well, so that if there is a suspected case, if the business does have to shut down, how do we continue? Is there any working at home that we can do, or how is that facilitated? All of this should be in your plans. The lead worker representative then as well. There's too many times I talk to prospective clients or clients, and the manager or the owner is the lead worker representative. The lead worker representative is a conduit between the staff and management or owners, so we need to make sure that that's in place. So it's that kind of middle line, it's that kind of middle management. That's kind of what we're looking for, or even senior staff members. That would be more what the lead worker should be doing. It's the day to day. It's kind of in the nitty gritty of it. The temporary restructuring then as well. So if the work patterns are being used to part of a control measure, that's open as well, and should have a knock-on effect. I think I stalled there. It should have a book then as well. Okay, so preparing for a suspected case. So first off, you must define a structure that identifies the responsibilities in the team. Now, preparation for a suspected case, the whole process doesn't rely on that one person. It is not just the lead worker representative. You must bring together a team for it, and it needs to be a team process. You appoint appropriate managers for dealing with it, so they lead the charge on it. A designated area should be identified in advance, and the routes should be accessible by people with disabilities. So when I'm auditing, I look at the isolation area. I'll ask about the isolation area. It's important to think about it and reevaluate where it is now, and do within your drills as well. So if you're doing a drill, a lot of questions will be raised from a drill. Is it the right isolation area? How far does it have to go? What's our cleaning measures from that isolation area out to the door, or the exit from there? All of this being brought into play with that designated area. Within it as well, it should be your new guidelines on first aid, and you should have all your PPE inside in there as well. So when I talk to clients, especially with smaller premises, they haven't really got the luxury of being able to have a boardroom as just that's your isolation area. It doesn't always have to be your isolation area, but it's designated, if need be, that will be your isolation area, and you'd have a pack in there. What I include in the pack with clients is a poster that we can put up on the door, or an A4 on the door to say there's no entry, isolation area in progress, or isolation in progress, something like that. Something simple that it's clearly identified now that is the isolation area, and that we need PPE on entry. 1, your PPE is in the room. 2, your PPE should be outside it as well. So how do we go into the room? So think about those kind of things with the isolation area. Isolate between the door, so should be able to close as well. And there's a possibility of one or more displaying signs and need it. So have that auxiliary isolation area. And then a COVID-19 suspected case. So if someone becomes ill at work with any of the symptoms, they should be issued with PPE. They should call their own GP. They need to avoid touching anything, practice good hygiene procedures. We all know that. I'm not going to go on too much about it. but it needs that this is part of the drill. These are the points that we need to be drilling on and training on. Managements are to contact the HSE for further instructions. That's when they're going to ask you for your documentation, and it is to contact them immediately. And then the employee goes into self-isolation for 14 days, but the GP kind of takes it from there, and they'll coordinate with you and the HSE. So it's that kind of triangle that will be put from on the floor or in the shop or in and a confirmed case then in the workplace. So if a confirmed case is identified, management and the lead worker representative will provide relevant staff with advice in conjunction with public health advice. So again, this would have been your correspondence with the HSE. The staff that need to be brought up to date with face to face or in or being coughed on for any length. I know I put that in there, but anyone who has cleaned up after it, close friendship groups or work groups, any employee living in the same household, these should all be within your policies. And those who have been in close contact need to stay at home for 14 days in isolation as well, and they will be actively followed up with. So you can see the importance of having that contact tracing and that small group working, so you know exactly who needs to be contacted and when. It's not that panic that sets in, like, who do we contact? Shut the whole place down. It can be mitigated, and the HSA will talk you through that as well. It's once you have your policies in place, but there's no point in shutting the gate once the horse is bolted. It needs to be put in place beforehand. These are if something happened, this is what and the step-by-steps need to be in the response plan, and it comes full circle to the response plan we talked about at the very beginning. It's very straightforward. It needs to be kept straightforward as well. And I say, when we train people on health and safety, I like to try keep it to as simple as possible. And I do say to clients that if a fourth year came into you for work experience, you should be able to sit them down and they should be able to understand it without any experience of the workforce. And that's where we need to be doing with your response plans. And then just touching on some of the personal protective equipment that needs to be in those isolation areas and outside the isolation area as well. So when you have the ventilation, that's natural dilution with the windows, the tissues, hand sanitizers and disinfectants, having the PPE in place, that's the gloves and the mask, a clinical waste bag. Don't forget that. Make sure that's in there. If anyone's gone for a test or that one of those drive-thrus, they give you 2 big black plastic bags. Make sure that we have those in place when they're in there as well. And then the return to normal for that isolation area as well. So, how is it going to be cleaned? Make sure that we know the touch points that are possible in that room and identify it. The same as any health and safety, it's not important until it's very important. So just have that, think about it, and sit down with your team and figure it out first. So what I would recommend, and what we would do just before any of the response plan and to kind of bring it all together into the response plan is updating policies that like I spoke about, lone working, occupational driving, making sure all risk assessments are matching up to what you're doing, and that they're not just signed off on ones that were done previously. So it's really, they need to be looked at. Mental health policies then as well. All of this is confusing for people. People are legitimately scared for loved ones. We need to take that into consideration as well. And having a clear process and clear training, that helps. and having documentary proof. It's not down on paper. It never happened. I'd always recommend an EAP. I can't talk highly enough about it. Just having an employee assistance program that someone can pick up a phone confidentially and talk to someone on the other end about changes in life, anxiety that they have at the moment in a global pandemic. It is there. We do provide it if you're interested. And we can help with the COVID-19 response plan, the review of your existing documentation, creating those policies that I spoke about, the recoveries plans as well, and BCPs, we help out on those. We help with the creation of the risk assessments, housekeeping policies, and I won't read them all. You can see them. And if you're looking to book in or you have any questions, you can contact Douglas on 086 7704 538. And if there's a few questions, I have a little bit of time, and I think Douglas can come in then as well, just to answer a few questions.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Dean, thanks very much.
No problem.
Guys, I'll just say hello to you. I'm Douglas Higgins. I'm your regional consultant with Peninsula. I'm down the road from me in Kilkenny, and my job with Peninsula over the last 6 years is to come out and have a chat, give you some complimentary advice if needs be, or discuss what we do. There have been a couple of questions coming in, Dean, as you've been talking. Yep. I've answered one or two. I just want to open them back up there, if you just give me a moment. Or there's one in there actually, just so that I say it's a moment, from Nuala. It is to say an employer should contact HSE before employee has contacted their GP.
Yeah, so what I would do in that case is I would recommend the staff member to contact the GP, and what you'd be doing contacting the HSE is for the most current advice. You'd be just following usually it's a stand down order, or we will be in contact with the GP. It's to get ahead of it, is always my recommendation. It is the GP will contact the HSE, but I get ahead of it with what their recommendations are for it, and they'll talk you through it. They'll ask for your policies and procedures, and what you don't want is things to get kind of backlogged, and then they'll be talking about 24 hours, 37. I try to get ahead of it with all my clients.
And there's one in there just from John Byrne. So, hi Douglas and Dean, how you doing, John? When a positive test has been confirmed, does the HSE automatically liaise with the employer, or is it up to the employer to make contact?
I would love to say they automatically do, but I would not rely on that. Again, I would look at it from a commercial point of view and trying to get ahead of the queue. I would contact the HSE and I would ask for guidance on it. I would be transparent with my documentation. I make sure my clients have the right documentation. And again, it is all about getting ahead of it. Yes, technically they're supposed to liaise with you, but just contacting them, they'll never say no, you shouldn't have done that. It's about that transparency, and again making sure that we can continue on with the business.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, and I've heard that a lot, John, from many different businesses I've met over the last few weeks, saying, hasn't it changed, Douglas, that the HSE will now come directly to the employer? Mm-hmm. And just like Dina says there, yes, in principle, that is the alleged new way of going forward. Best practice, as Dean would say, if they don't make contact with you, well then certainly make contact with them. I'm also conscious there was a couple of questions came in during, as you were talking, Dean, and I think the lady's name was Caroline. I just can't see those questions at the moment. I don't know where they've disappeared to. So let me try to find them again. I did try to answer a couple. Oh, here they are. Yeah, Dean, maybe your assistance with this one.
Yeah.
If a positive case is identified and there are close contacts identified in the workplace, will the HSE impose a shutdown on the business, or what is the protocol that takes place and what will happen in the ensuing 48 hours?
Okay. Yeah, that again comes back to your response plan. So they're going to ask for close contacts and what is your policy? How was it dealt with? They will ask all of these questions. And I've been on the other end of that phone quite a few times. They ask the questions, they probe, and then it will be, it could be a shutdown order of the complete facility if they're not happy with how it was dealt with and they're not happy with the response. It could be a partial shutdown or just isolation of the selected employees if necessary. So again, it comes by a case-by-case basis, but they will very much base it on how it was responded to and what are your policies in place for it. If they're not strong, then yes, I can say with certainty that would be a full shutdown. If you are managing it and you have procedures in place, then the potential for staying open and it being an isolate within the business is much higher.
Thanks, Dean. And there's a question there, which is actually, I'd like to answer this one myself. How you doing, Tom McDermott Walsh? So why I'd like to answer this is because I had a direct involvement with this 2 weeks ago. So the question for the panel is, if an employee's child goes for a COVID test, must a parent leave work and await the child's test before possible return to work? So yes, so in that case, if a child, or indeed a parent for that matter, or any immediate member of your household was to have to go for a test, well then yes, unfortunately you are obliged to self-isolate just until the result of the test comes back. This actually happened to myself and my family a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't my child, it was my wife. But again, it was very unfortunate. Like many people maybe on the panel, kids have just gone back to school. And unfortunately, I had to return home from work. I was in the field that day and we had to take our child out of school to follow the protocol. Thankfully, the results came back quickly enough within 24 hours, negative, which most are, and we all returned back. So to answer your question, I believe the answer is yes, you do. Dean, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're 100% correct on that, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Now, I just want to see, is there any other questions that I haven't answered? So I just want to go back to a question I was just temporarily trying to answer for Caroline. And if you have a few more, Caroline, I might even pop out to you and have a chat, or we can do a video call. Dean, just while you're there, for employees traveling from a green list country back into Ireland, and obviously expressing their entitlement to return to work without need for restrictions, what can the employer do to secure the safety of the workplace and other personnel from any risk that may come with such an employee's movements? So again, my initial advice, sorry, and I got caught up, was the first thing we're going to do is have that employee complete a return to work form where we can ask key questions. But Dean, if you want to elaborate on that one for Caroline.
Yeah, and just on the return to work as well, there's a little bit of, there's a lot of questions on that, when you get them to fill out, is it just at one time when they're coming back, is it a weekly basis is another question I get asked. It's a self-declaration. So when they're coming back from work, you ask them for the self-declaration, have they come in contact with anyone? They have to fill that out. If you want to put in extra measures, as in, maybe even a slight isolation within the premises, it might be going a little bit too far and it might be infringing on HR, but when in doubt, pick up the phone. You can ask us, and we will keep you up to date with anything that's with any movement on that. Around travel, it can be quite tricky. But what my recommendation will be a self-declaration when they come back in, and then following the guidance, then it shouldn't impede their work.
And there's just a further question actually in there from Tom McDermott Walsh. We have not paid employees, so it's more HR, we have not paid employees for any sick days off. However, we are now discouraging anyone to come to work unwell. We are considering a fairer sick policy for the next months. Are there any supports on this? So as I've said, unfortunately with this pandemic and people having to self-isolate or stay out of work, I go back and we look at it initially before there's COVID from a HR point of view. I always ask any business, do you have a sick pay policy? And the first thing I will state, there's no statutory entitlement to sick pay, so that's very important. If you don't have a sick pay policy, you treat this in the same respect. I know it can seem awkward and unfair maybe for employees saying, well, if I'm not well and I can't come into work today, I'm going to be at the loss of money. Now, again, as you probably know, and there's a bill being legislated for now to actually bring in mandatory sick pay in Ireland because of this particular situation. In relation to, are there any supports on this? So again, depending on the length of time that the employee is going to be out of work, Tom, it's like everything else, they can certainly go to the Department of Social Welfare and look to claim if they're going to be out for a long period of time. If it's the case that they're only out for a day or two, I don't believe there's any state support for that at the moment. And this really boils down to an individual policy on behalf of each business. Certain businesses I've spoken to now, if you're in the financial position to do so, may offer some form of remuneration. They may look at a little bit of utilizing annual leave or a little bit of time off in lieu. These are really going to boil down to your own personal choices, Tom, what you feel your company can actually do yourself. But this is, again, is the protocol for anybody. If you're not feeling well, if you're feeling symptomatic, well, then the first thing you should really do is contact the doctor. Because the last thing you want is for people to come to work. And I appreciate, Tom, if I was sitting in front of you, you're probably saying to me, but Douglas, this is the problem. If people aren't getting paid and they're at home and they're not feeling too good, they're going to come in because they can't be at the loss of money. And that is the challenge that we're all facing at the moment, in particular, if there's non-payment. So for short periods of time, there's no miracle result for that at the moment. And if this bill is passed, well, things may change in the near future. Let me just see, did something else pop in there? Sorry, there's a message here from John Byrne. What is the advice where an employee wants to travel abroad to a non-green list country, so a red zone, and take unpaid leave for the 14 self-day isolation period after their return? Is it inappropriate for employers to strongly discourage foreign travel by its employees? Okay. I have my opinion on that, Dean. Do you
It's an overlap. It's an overlap between HR and H&S there. Your control measures will be to discourage it, and I think this is the governments are discouraging any travel to red list. So I would say that it would be okay to discourage. Again, it's you leave it open within your response plans that you follow government guidance. I believe, I'm not a HR expert, but I believe that there are certain things that you can take into consideration with that, and not allowing holiday leave for it, as long as you have a certain period of time that you bring it into consideration. But again, I would have to look that up a little bit further or get one of my colleagues to contact you on that question. But from a health and safety point of view, the isolation, after 14 days, it comes down to a mix of commercial viability for it as well. So I think it's more a HR issue, but we can get that question answered as well.
Yeah, no, it is more of a HR issue. And is it inappropriate for employers to strongly discourage? It's not inappropriate from a HR point of view. It's recommended to maybe say, well, we're not recommending for you to travel to the United States of America, Douglas, because it's in turmoil. And if you go there, when you come back, you are going to have to self-isolate for 14 days. So from a legal standpoint, we can't prevent a staff member traveling abroad for annual leave, irrespective of where they want to travel to. What we can do is control how they return. So, and this is where the unpaid leave comes from, because that's not something that you have to categorically grant unless you're happy to do so from a HR point of view, John. Okay, so if someone is going to travel to a red zone and they're going to come back, of course, they're going to have to self-isolate for the 14 days. But again, that's been the challenge during the summer, is who has that extra annual leave to take for that? If you're happy to grant unpaid leave for the employee to self-isolate for the 14 days, well, then that's absolutely fine. And you can certainly recommend or say we don't promote traveling to a red zone for your own personal safety and health. And obviously, and the staff's response will be, Well, when I return, and I'm just picking America, guys, any red zone, when we return, we are going to self-isolate for the 14 days. And if I have no symptoms, I'm non-symptomatic, well, then I should be good to return to work. And that is correct. But again, John, if you want to discuss it a little bit further detail, give us a little phone call. Or like I said, I'm happy to pop out and have a chat to you if you'd like. Is there anything else I've missed? Sorry, bear with me, guys, just as I just run through these other questions. I just want to make sure I haven't missed anything else. Sorry, Nuala Byrne, can an employer control employees traveling to and from work together? Yes, we can. So again, this is something else that's cropping up of putting 4 or 5 people in a van together traveling to work. So again, this is going to go back to your travel policy. Dean, again, that one is probably a little bit more on the health and safety side as well.
Again, that would be going back to your response plan, the training, if the travel is for work. Also, so when you take into consideration, you know, maybe construction, the deliveries, anything like that, you can manage that to say, this is our policy. You must travel individually. We discourage transport on buses, things that you can put those into your policies. If not, you have to put control measures in place. So if going in a shared vehicle, that you have all your control measures in place, that you have your cleaning policies in place then as well. And remember, don't forget the seatbelt, which is in the breathing zone, that's being cleaned. Things, all of that has to be put in place. So that's when I talked about during the presentation, looking after the safety from the front door now, or even from the home to work. You have to put your control measures and your policies in place to ensure that your workplace is as safe as possible, which includes your the vehicles.
Great stuff. Thanks a million, Dean. Okay. Ladies and gents, I think that's the questions answered. I hope I haven't missed anybody. And what I would like to say again, for anyone that has some further queries or questions, this is complimentary. This is my job. I'll pop out to you. We can have a chat if you would like. Social distancing, of course, or alternatively, I can do a video call with you at a date and time that suits. And I'll ensure I have someone to answer the questions in the unlikely event I can't myself. And that's why the details were just put up there for you, and Brian will also have them. So please, we are the partner of Chambers Ireland. I am local, and we're very happy to support you on a complimentary basis. I hope that's okay.
Thank you very much, Douglas, and thank you, Dean. I know it is. It's a situation that you know, every business will have to plan for, and you know, if the situation arises on your door, the important thing is, you know, just to take a moment. Feel free to give me a call in the chamber at any time as well if you've got any queries. I know we have worked with a number of companies and members already who have had instances of cases identified, and it's just a lot of the time it can be talking through to see what's the best way to deal with it. It's like Dean mentioned, you know, we were saying about media, controlling that flow of information, what's being said out there, how is it said, you know, and making sure at the same time that you're protecting your employee, because behind that potential positive case is a person, and you want to do that. And I would say one of the things I would recommend personally, you know, and one of the views we've taken is that, you know, it's important to be open and transparent in situations like this, rather than, I know we've seen situations where people have tried to withhold certain information or reduce it, and it probably hasn't worked out the best. So I would say that transparency is important. You know, and we have also seen in cases where some companies, you know, in communication, they found it difficult to get clarity on testing. You know, and we've spoke to government ministers on it. So if you do have any problems, do raise it with us. If you are looking for where to get private testing, depending on the size of business, one company that I know we've got details on and is trying to get them, that is carrying out testing, and I know a number of companies that have already worked with them, and the results that they've fed back to me have been quite positive. And that's a company called Code Blue. You'd find them at codeblue.ie. But do do get in touch if you've got any queries or questions. We'll arrange to get the slides sent out to you. The webinar from today will be online on the Chamber website, and we'll get the link out to you again. Thank you very much, Douglas and Dean, for taking the time to present to us this afternoon. Thank you to everybody who took the time to join us, and we look forward to speaking to you all soon, and do take care and be safe.
Most importantly.
Bye for now.
Thanks very much, Brian. God bless everyone. Dean,
All the best.
thank you very much.
No problem. Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.